Thank you, João Carlos. Back. Again, my name is George Kourounis. I am explorer in residence with the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, and I'm also the chairman of the Canadian chapter of the Explorers Club. And my specialty, it's kind of like Hugo with his big waves or Amos with whales and sharks, but for me, it's natural disasters and extreme forces of nature. So I chase tornadoes, I document lightning storms, I drive into the eye of hurricanes and explore some of the most extreme, beautiful, and dangerous caves around the world, planting satellite tracking beacons on top of Atlantic icebergs to document the effects of climate change and such, descending into pits of fire in the Turkmenistan desert. So those are the kind of things that I love to do. Now, on top of all that, volcanoes are one of my favorite places to visit. And we're obviously in a very volcanic area right now here in the Azores. So I'm going to touch on that today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of our relationship with volcanoes and national parks. One thing that's really important is Mother Nature has terms and conditions. Have you ever downloaded an app onto your phone and you're about to install it and then you lie? You say, yes, I read the terms and conditions. But do you really? No, you don't. No one does. I don't know a single person who does. Mother Nature has very simple terms and conditions. Civilization exists by geological consent, subject to change without notice. Mother Nature is in charge, and she does not, I'm watching you, she does not always give you much warning as to when she might throw a temper tantrum. Now, of course, I'm anthropomorphizing, but that's kind of how it works. So here in Azores, we're obviously in a very volcanic area, as João Carlos was already telling us about. We're at the not really the joint, the splitting apart, if you will, of three different tectonic plates. And because of that, we have a variety of different volcanic activity here. Nothing too recent, though. The last eruption in Azores was back in 1958. Now, that's a long time for you and I, but in the context of geologic time, that's nothing. So is it possible for there to be an eruption here? Maybe today? Not likely. But it could happen. And I want to give you an example of probably the closest approximation to that has been recent and kind of in this area. But first, why do we love volcanoes? Well, they actually provided the world with the building blocks for life itself. But over and above that, I mean, that's a pretty big thing. That's kind of important, like kind of responsible for all life on Earth. But over and above that, volcanic soil is really good for two of our favorite liquids, wine and coffee, right? Now, those are two really important crops, but volcanic soil is really good for that. So a lot of civilizations, a lot of cities, a lot of villages are built on or near volcanoes. And we use them for national parks because they're so beautiful as well, right? So we have this draw towards them because of the bounty and the prosperity that we get from these forces, but at the same time, as we know, that can be revoked without warning. Not too far from here, in the Cape Verde Islands, Cabo Verde, in 2015, a volcano erupted, Fogo volcano. I dropped everything, hopped on a plane, and went straight there to document what was going on. So that's the most recent eruption, excluding Iceland. Iceland is sort of its own thing in this part of the Atlantic. And this eruption was very dramatic. There were these explosions, these bombs of lava flying through the air, and the ground was shaking so much that if you look at the streaks of light of this long exposure photograph, you can see how my tripod was shaking because of the earthquakes that were absolutely continuous. Burned my camera bag and melted my boots. A river of lava poured out the side of the volcano and into the nearby town of Portela. This town is known for its vineyards. They're there because it's good for growing grapes. But they live every day of their life knowing that this could happen. The entire town was steamrolled by this hot rock that poured out of the volcano. Luckily, it was slow moving, 0 fatalities. But the entire town was just obliterated. And I was able to go there, get up close in the town, take some lava samples, and then leave safely. But safety was not always guaranteed, because at one point I was inside this building. I was hosting a television program at the time, and as I'm talking to camera, this lava flow started to crash against the wall and actually broke through the door into the room where I was. That's when we knew it was time to go. That was my first clue that it was time to go. And less than a minute later, the entire wall collapsed in, right where I was standing. So in this part of the world, these are the kind of things that can happen. So we have to try and sort of, live in harmony. Let's go to a more extreme example, shall we? The Democratic Republic of Congo. It's part of the African Rift Valley. And there are numerous active volcanoes there. There's 2 in particular, Nyiragongo and Nyamiragira are the names of them. And this is a very active volcano. This is Nyiragongo, as seen from the nearby city of Goma. 1 million people live in Goma. Actually, more than 1 million. They live every day of their life looking up at night and watching the glow from the top of the mountain, like Mount Doom from the Lord of the Rings. Really, it's very much like that. Perched high above the city is a lake of lava, the largest in the world. It's about 100 meters across. I've done several expeditions here to go and document this particular active volcano. Our campsite at the top was amazing, the best glow you could possibly imagine. It's like being on Mars. Probably the closest thing that you can experience on Earth to being on another planet. It's just mesmerizing. Love it. But we didn't just go there. No. We set up several kilometers worth of redundant ropes. It's about a half a kilometer down to the bottom, over 1,200 feet. That's deeper than the height of the Empire State Building. And we were able to rappel down to get up close to the lake of lava. And that's me. I have done this very thing at numerous volcanoes around the world, in Ethiopia, in Vanuatu, quite a few different places. But standing there at the edge is really something special. And this is all in a national park. This is Virunga National Park, most famous for the mountain gorillas, right? Most people don't know that there's this lake of lava perched above a city. Now, I've condensed our descent down into like 1.5 minutes worth of video here. Let's see if this goes. There we go. So that was our campsite up at the top. And that's where we rappelled down. And it would boil away 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The lava here is very fluid, which is unusual for this type of volcano. Usually these steep-sided volcanoes have very sticky lava.
This is clearly very unstable. There are huge gaps and cracks and crevices everywhere.
Not the most stable place. We had to set up multiple pitches of ropes to get down to the bottom. We lived up at the summit for about a week and a half, waiting for our weather window to clear so we could get to the bottom.
Finished the last pitch of the rappel. I've slipped on the heat suit, and time to go take a walk over to the edge of the lake of lava.
The lake of lava.
That is a lot of heat.
And of course, the brimstone smell of the sulfur dioxide gas.
I wish you could experience the heat that I'm feeling right now. What a tremendous experience, being literally one step away from dropping into the largest lake of lava on planet Earth. Now the long journey back up, 1/2 kilometer straight up out of this crater.
Now, getting down to the bottom is one thing, climbing back up out of it is a total other thing. We have special gasoline-powered rope ascenders, kind of like Batman climbing up out of these craters. And so this volcano has been doing this for decades, churning away, always looming, always ominous to the people who live in the city of Goma nearby. And then something happened. On my birthday, May 22nd of this year, a crack formed in the side of the volcano, the lava lake drained and poured out down the steep sides of the mountain and poured right into the city. The plumbing for this volcano runs directly underneath the streets of Goma. And this wasn't the first time. This particular lava flow only made it into the suburbs. If you look at the top left-hand portion of the screen, you can see there's the airport runway. And in the background is Lake Kivu. Now, this volcano has done similar eruptions in 1977 and in 2002. This is some of the remnants of the 2002 lava flows. And during that particular eruption, the lava made it through the city, cut the airport runway in half, splitting the city apart, and it made it all the way to the lake, Lake Kivu. This is important, but maybe not for the reasons you might think. We're going to do a side trip to Cameroon. In Cameroon, there's another lake, much smaller, called Lake Nyos. And back in 1986, on a quiet night, something happened there. Lake Nyos is kind of like a Coke can. There's a lot of dissolved carbon dioxide at the bottom from ancient volcanic activity. The pressure of the water above holds that dissolved carbon dioxide at the bottom of the lake. And if you've ever shaken a soda can, you've got a pretty good idea of what happened here. In the middle of the night, we don't know exactly what triggered it. It might have been an underwater landslide, but that lake got shooken, and a limnic eruption occurred, also known as an overturn, a lake overturn. And all of that dissolved carbon dioxide burst to the surface, exploded with tremendous force up into the air. That doesn't sound too bad. It did create a tsunami, but the big problem is that this is carbon dioxide. It's heavier than air. And when that gas finally settled, all the livestock were dead. Every bird was dead. Every insect was dead. And 1,700 people lost their lives, suffocated by this carbon dioxide. The lake exploded. And unfortunately, this can happen in other places as well. Now, I think you know where I'm headed with this, because it just so happens that Lake Kivu in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the shadow of Nyiragongo volcano, is also a lake that has dissolved gas in the bottom. A lot of methane, a lot of carbon dioxide. And it's 1,000 times bigger than the lake in Cameroon. And that volcano has a tendency of having eruptions that flow into the lake, which could be just the right kind of trigger that would be needed to overturn that lake. There are 2 million people that live around Lake Kivu, including the 1 million plus in the city of Goma, which has already been troubled for decades with civil war, gangs, all kinds of refugees from the Rwandan genocide. This is one of the most conflict-ridden parts of the world. They have problems stacked on top of problems. So these people now that live in the city of Goma, this gives you a bit of an idea of the scale of how close the volcano is with the city and the lake. You can see the plume of gas going over the city and over Lake Kivu. Now, the good news is that Lake Kivu is not likely to have one of these limnic eruptions. It's pretty unlikely. It's pretty unlikely that an asteroid is going to hit a planet and wipe out almost every living thing 65 million years ago, right? Remember that permission can be revoked without warning. And so, even though we need volcanoes, we love volcanoes, we go to Yellowstone, we go to Hawaii, we build cities near them, coexistence with volcanoes is always going to be a tricky thing, right? So whether you are living in a city of 1 million people in the Congo, or whether you're a farmer in Indonesia who literally watches a Merapi volcano in the background while he's plowing his field, the next time you visit one of these national parks that feature volcanoes, just keep in the back of your mind that terms and conditions of Mother Nature, our civilization exists by geological consent, subject to change without notice. They're beautiful, they're powerful, we need them, we must respect them. Thank you so much.